strategy post the COVID era. We have some renowned speakers today from the industry who would guide us in the way the business happened and how did they change their strategy. Think of it, every essential was being delivered while the lockdown was announced. We were sitting at home, people were working from home, but the essentials were being delivered to us continuously. And we thought of having one of the veterans from the industry in the logistics space who was managing the entire essentials, and there was not a lockdown for a single day for them. They were in fact working 24/7 in terms of understanding how can the essentials be kept continuously on, and how do they manage the logistics of the entire goods. We have Mr. Bala Subramaniam from Parekh Integrated Services, who's got 19 years of experience in the domain. He's worked in various companies like Global Corp, Linfox Logistics, and now with Parekh Integrated Services. He's been known to set up HR processes in this logistics domain, which is otherwise supposed to be unorganized space. A person whom I met few times, and I find that he continuously keeps challenging his benchmarks. Person who basically wants to set up processes and keeps looking at perfection inside the most perfect process that one can set it up. Okay, it would be nice to have his views coming from him on the way he ensured that the continuity is kept on. Our second panelist is Mr. Saurabh Sen Gupta. He is an XLRI alumni. He's worked with some of the largest conglomerates in the brick and mortar space, ITC, which is a known name, and Berger Paints, which is again a household name for everybody. He's been managing the HR function at Berger Paints now. Something which I'm sure for the panelists also to know, there are certain articles which Saurabh has written and he's posted it on LinkedIn. One article which talks about social engagement inside or as a collaboration inside the companies. I like the punchline which he put it there, which talks about various engagement activities which corporate talks about. Something which I'll recommend you guys to read and understand the depth which he's written. He talks about the way various engagement programs inside the organization helps in colleagues competing inside the organization, but friends collaborating outside the organization. A very important read. And something, there's one more article which I would say, which here, yes sir, three black fools. It's again his article which is titled as yes sir, three black fools. One which I would request, and Saurabh, I would like to see some more articles on the same lines if you can write it down. Without taking much of your time, I'll also introduce our other company directors who are also in the panel today. Sunil Kabra, who heads ACE Human Capital, our contractual staffing arm, which has around 2,800 people today, and we are growing. We are with a lot of technology platform and automated certain processes and continuous looking at upgrading ourselves. Vicky Jain, Vicky Jain has been at the helm of, he's the founder, director of Convergence IT Solutions and has a HRMS platform, Unova Solutions, which has around 4.5 lakh people using that platform today and processing their salaries from that platform. And I'm Ranu Parwal from Acura Solutions. We are a tech-enabled recruitment and a headhunting company with a lot of partners on our platform today. I would request our first panelist, Saurabh and Bala as well, if they can share on views on certain points. Saurabh? Saurabh, just wanted to understand, talent strategy, if I understand, is about aligning with the company's goals. And COVID has changed the way the outlook for the growth or the survival, from growth to survival. Just wanted to understand what are the changes in the way the HR aligned with this strategy from an overall talent pool perspective and from fresh hire perspective. Over to you, Saurabh.
Thanks, Ranu. Hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you are.
Yes, you are.
Great. So thanks, Ranu, for the introduction and also for inviting me today to kind of share my thoughts and views. So it's interesting you mentioned that, the focus has shifted from growth to survival. And in fact, if you look around us, there are industries where survival has become the existential question. We have examples of, hospitality, airline, the aggregator kind of industries, which are on the brink of extinction. So, but at the same time, we also have instances of industries which have certainly found opportunity in this entire pandemic. If you look at very common examples like the kind of platform we are using, which is Zoom, or say OTT, these streaming services like a Netflix and a Hotstar. These industries have really kind of skyrocketed in the aftermath of the pandemic. So it's like, if one were to use the analogy, one man's food is another man's poison as far as COVID is concerned. But coming back to your question on how talent strategy has kind of shifted or pivoted along with these changes on account of the overall business strategy being forced to change, I would say that talent strategy does not exist in isolation. So, talent strategy exists to make the business strategy successful. If you look at the pre-COVID era, which you kind of characterized as the growth era, when the company is growing, the talent strategy is something which needs to feed and fuel that growth. So to that extent, the focus for HR leaders pre-COVID, particularly in growing companies, had been, or till recently has been, more market focused, more focused towards recruitment, towards attracting the right talent, towards prospecting new markets to get talent from, uh, how to make their value proposition more attractive and compelling to attract the right set of people. But that you will see has overnight, kind of over the last 3 4 months, metamorphosed kind of from an outward looking talent strategy to something which I would say is a more inward looking, inside focused strategy, scale focused on scaling down rather than scaling up. So when I say scaling down, it's about scaling down headcount. It's about looking at productivity with a fine kind of a magnifying glass, so to say, identifying where there is flab in the organization, cutting flabs, optimizing costs, whether it's manpower costs or whether it is operational expenses, essentially making the organization more efficient in terms of costs and productivity. So overall, to summarize, these talent strategy change that has happened is largely in terms of moving from a growth focused, outward looking strategy to a more scaling down focused, inward looking strategy is what I would say. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, very much. I would like to understand it from Bala sir as well. I just wanted to understand, Bala, more. I'm sure you kept, for you, it was very important to keep the entire business operational. There was no lockdown per se for you.
True.
So you guys, I'm sure, would have worked 24/7. What were the changes that you realized when the entire talent strategy, in terms of what were the changes that have come in? And I believe you also would have had April starting as a new year, right? So entire change. So wanted your perspective. How does the logistics space looked at it?
Thank you. Thank you. I would surely would like to take over from where Saurav has left. But before that, I would like to thank you, Sunil, and the entire team to have given me an opportunity to be a part of this wonderful session. And thanks, Saurav, for initiating such a thought-provoking title for this particular session that we are discussing on with respect to repurposing the talent strategy. Yes, it was, I would say, a never expected challenge that anyone had even thought of. It was like more to do with your attitude as an organization that needed to kind of change. Your ethos, that is the culture of the organization, had to change once again and be relevant to the changing times of COVID. So as our organization, I think we did what we have been doing all these years in terms of not having very too many managers on board from outside. We usually look at people from within to take on the roles and responsibility. And what we found here was we had more of tenured team members putting in their hands to ensure that the business was up and running. So we had many team members who were staying in Bhiwandi area, which was in a containment zone in Kalyan area, but people were traveling all the way from Dadar on a bike for 100 kilometers just to ensure that the customers' deliveries happen on time. So this situation has thrown up a lot of opportunities for us to again rethink our strategy, that only X factor doesn't work. It also depends on the experience and exposure that one gets into the organization.
Perfect. Perfect. I think just wanted to understand, you guys were, what are some ways in which COVID has forced the HR leaders to relook at the conventional talent processes and change the priority of the HR heads? Well, I wanted to understand, because in continuity of what we discussed,
Sure.
how did it change the, from a HR head perspective, how did it entirely change for you guys?
We focused purely on the 3 R's. Okay, the 3 R's would be rethink, reimagine, and reshape. When we talk about rethink, we had to support the external and internal customers. So it was to move out of our own comfort zones. So if you look at HR as a function, we were not looking at just taking care of the policies or ensuring that the guidelines are met. We were also with the business operations team, aligning for the team members, calling them, getting the transportations organized, counseling them, speaking to the family members, because every family member was scared to send their team member into the office because of the COVID. And there were so many rumors that COVID would spread through touch, would spread through just sneezing, spread through coughing. So it was a counseling that we had to do for the family members as well. But all of us worked round the clock, removing our positions from our desk and just looking at one goal to ensure that the customer satisfaction is being delivered on time, all time. So we did that. Second was we redefined the roles and responsibilities. For example, someone who was just managing the transportation bit was also given the additional role of taking the operations. So he was also taking care of a small business activity, ensuring that the dispatches and delivery comes under his kitty, and not just ensuring that once the goods are ready to be delivered, he takes it on from that piece. Similarly, HR got involved into administration and somewhere in the finance role as well, because the finance team was also not being able to report to the office. So some part of the financials in terms of cost control measures, or I would say signing of the vouchers, certain basic stuff. These are the things that we took on our hands to ensure that we give justice to our team and ensure that the funds are available all through. More importantly, reshape. Now the accountability shifted from just the top leaders to the middle management and the junior management. So every one of us had to play a role, and everyone had to be accountable and ensure that the deliverables happen, because our organization ethos is very clear: delight, customize, and deliver. So the during the pandemic situation, we have had a very different experience of having more business. So there has been an increase in few businesses because of the way we have delivered. So I think during such situation, just one thing comes to my mind is life is about accepting the challenges along the way, choose to keep moving forward and savoring the journey, and never let the circumstances drive you. You should be the one who should be driving the circumstances.
Bala, I just had a question from your thing only. You said that from senior management, mid-level management also started demonstrating certain things.
Yeah.
What were some key things that where you found that they were, that responsibilities suddenly passed on to mid-management? And I'm sure this was actually a time when I spoke to a lot of HR heads. They said they started finding out some very, very spark. So, some talent which was really geared up to take up larger responsibilities and delivered at this bad times. Some areas where you find that middle management was actually taking, start taking up ownership. Some instances which would help us to understand.
Sure. I'll give you a simple example. We have a customer who deals in the essential medical kits. Okay, so we have all the BU heads who stay on the other side of the town and who can't come to Bhiwandi. So there was one management trainee who had been inducted last year, and he had grown through the ranks within a year's time. He chose to stay in the warehouse for 2 months to ensure that the deliveries happen on time. He would interface with the customer. He would send in the reports. He will do the flow management along with the junior team members who were well available. and ensured that the deliveries were happening on time. So he was able to do resource mobilization.
Okay.
All through the time we were thinking maybe he's a very docile guy, he doesn't talk much, he's from IIM, whether he'll be able to do all these things. But this pandemic has thrown open a very surprising element of, chota packet bada dhamaka. So someone who was labeled as not having that X factor has actually been the one who's delivered the most.
Right. Perfect. In fact, Saurabh, did you have similar instances in your organization? Because this was one thing which I heard it from other organizations as well, where the junior level guys actually went up the took the entire mantle in their hand or the baton in their hand and wanted to deliver. Any instance where you found something similar? Saurabh?
Yeah, I was
believe,
muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
In fact, some of the examples which Bala was giving are really fascinating in terms of how people have stepped up and kind of helped to mitigate the impact of this crisis. And even in our industry, when I refer to, it's largely the paints and building materials industry, which has been severely hit by this pandemic, as opposed to an essential service which will still kind of continue to exist, or rather even in certain industries grow. Our sales volumes had dipped practically to zero in the month of April until at least the middle of May. So it was really a difficult time for the industry as well as us as an organization. One of the things that we did, and when we say we, I refer to the entire team, whether it's the R&D team, whether it's the product development teams, whether it's the field sales teams, or the kind of support teams internally. We all got together, and overnight, we basically diversified from a 100-year-old paint and chemicals company to an FMCG company. So if you look at
Okay.
the line of business that we have recently launched, we are today into the entire space of home hygiene, which has categories
Okay.
floor cleaners and toilet cleaners and hand sanitizers and disinfectants and so on. So this is core FMCG, and this we had absolutely no expertise. We never believed that we could or even we wanted to compete in that space. But throughout this lockdown, when we couldn't go out and sell paints, we were putting our heads together in our R&D centers and in our brand management teams, and figuring out, if we can't sell paints and we have to survive, then what do we do? And that's how we pivoted into, I think it would be like a record in terms of diversification of a new business. In normal situations, you would get hold of a McKinsey or a BCG, do an analysis, they will present and represent, and it would be possibly a year-long effort to even make that decision and convince the board to move into an unfamiliar line of business. But we did it, possibly turned around the whole thing from concept to a product on the shelf in a span of 30 to 45 days. And that has really taken everybody's efforts, and everybody has had to pull their weight through. So that is another example of, really innovation and resilience, which I could possibly think of in the middle of a pandemic.
Perfect. I keep watching, I'm sure because of the lockdown, I keep watching that one movie from Disney, The Good Dinosaur, along with my kid. And there's a dialogue which says, Tufan aaya to kuch deke jayega. Think of it, a product getting launched in 30 days. Mahindra and Mahindra's automobile sales goes for a toss, and they launch Berger Paints launching sanitizer and home hygiene segment. Within 20 days, it's across the country where they're launching it. Think of it, Mahindra and Mahindra talking about launching ventilators in the country where they were automobile companies. I'm sure it's an opportunity. I just wanted to check one thing, Saurabh, from you. A very important thing from talent perspective. How are you assessing the requirement of the talent right now in the current setup? And benchmarking it with the requirements, I'm sure the requirements have changed. From the paint industry, talking about the different model. You're talking about value-added platforms today, talking about paints being offered as a service. How are you assessing the talent requirement, which is emerging from because of the COVID situation now? And what are the key changes that you're forcing from a near future?
Absolutely. So mentioned earlier that talent strategy has to basically subserve the business strategy. So if I were to kind of continue with the earlier example that I was giving in terms of us diversifying from a traditional paints, and paints continues to exist, but kind of creating a new engine of growth for us in terms of an FMCG line of business. So when it comes to HR and talent, the onus is on us to be able to set up the right teams, which will be able to deliver an FMCG business and grow that and make it profitable and sustainable for us. So the first problem that a company like us were faced with was that in-house we have never looked at talent from an FMCG window. So when we have hired people from the market over the years, we have taken people from a familiar industry, which would be building materials or paints. Even people who have joined us, as campus hires, as management trainees and so on, they have been groomed within the system, and their exposure has always been in terms of paint. So whether they are in the sales function, they've always sold paints. If they are in the marketing function, they are familiar only with how to kind of market a paint brand. And the same goes with manufacturing and R&D and other teams as well. So the question is that, how overnight when the business wants to launch a product, how do you set up the teams and what is the approach that you take? So the immediate thing that we did in terms of assessing our internal talent was look at not only the high performers to fill up these new roles, but also people who exhibit the required, I would say, bandwidth. So somebody may have been in the same role and been performing for 20 years. Will I pick that person up and make him the head of the new FMCG business? Possibly no, because he has never gone outside his comfort zone. But I look at people who have within our organization moved around different locations, different regions, geographies, different markets, basically expanded his adaptability and skill sets. Even though he may have sold paints in different roles, but at least he has taken on different challenges throughout the career. So these are the kind of people we identified internally to populate our new line of business, so to say. But obviously, you cannot make this a sustainable venture unless you also have the talent from the market. So we are also looking out, watching out for talent in terms of people who have FMCG expertise to kind of join us and augment or complement the internal talent that is already there. So that has been our overall approach.
Okay, just extension of this question, Saurabh. Just wanted to understand. You have FMCG is completely about distribution. What are the challenges that you found slightly differing from these things? You had distributors and their salesmen as well, right? So how did you work towards getting them up the curve? Because one is about your internal talent that's not in our direct control. So how did you look at that particular aspect of training? And in this time when everybody was at home?
So, if you look at traditional FMCG, the trade marketing, it happens through a distribution model, which is completely unfamiliar to us. The paint industry operates through a direct dealership kind of a model.
Right.
Right. So, for us, when we have been selling paints, it has been directly to the dealers, and they sell it to the end consumer. But when we are moving into FMCG, overnight, it is really foolish to expect that we will have access to a traditional FMCG distribution network. It takes time. I mean, the big shots in the FMCG industry, they have spent decades, possibly over 100 years to establish the kind of distribution strength they have. So what we have done is, we have also set ourselves realistic goals. Overnight we cannot compete with a PNG or an HUL or a Reckitt when it comes to FMCG products. So our initial approach, or if you can call it the Horizon One strategy, is to look at the synergies that are there between our existing distribution, existing trade channels, and what the home hygiene category can leverage on. So to that extent, we are already present in the consumers' homes in terms of paint as a service. So from that window, what we've done is we have launched our products within the paint channel. We are trying to push it through our express painting network as well as our paint dealerships, because gradually with the kind of, hopefully with the COVID thing dying down and people being more confident in terms of getting external contractors into their home and getting stuff done, that is where we will also get an opportunity to be able to push our home hygiene portfolio to the consumer, let them sample it and experience it and so on. So I would say we haven't really kind of overnight shifted or pivoted to a totally different distribution model, because that's not possible. We are taking baby steps, so to say. Yes, we are investing in a lot of training. So our sales training team is heavily conducting training in terms of understanding the FMCG consumers mindset. What is it that they look at? Do they look at price and volumes and margins in the same way as a paint customer or a paint dealer, or are the dynamics different? How do schemes work differently? So these are some of the training inputs that we are giving to our existing field sales team, so that they are able to be better prepared when they kind of interact with the new set of customers and dealers.
Okay. Bala, a quick question to you on the same lines. Wanted to understand from the from the kind of talent that you have, how are you benchmarking your existing talent that is available, and how are you looking at the talent strategy completely?
Sure. I think by the grace of God, as an organization, since we have always been ready and willing to support the customers at any extent, we have not had an gap in the business, or yes, the volumes have slowed down in certain business areas where the eye surgery and dental treatments have come down. So the warehousing, from that perspective, the volumes have come down. But overall, we have seen steady growth in terms of the business. And yes, what we are doing now is we are delving from within and checking in terms of what's a good to have and what's a need to have talent. So whether we can push that good to have talent acquisition to the next 2 quarters, and just look at the need to have talent that needs to be there within the organization. So we are also kind of refining the roles and responsibilities. We are also refining the entire strategy of whether we need to actually have more people from outside, or can we look at scaling up the entire talent pool that we have from within and take them to the next level, because this situation is not going to change at least for the next 6 months. And getting someone from outside is just going to add additional cost. And yes, the investment is going to be more in terms of training, in terms of handholding, in terms of onboarding as well.
In fact, you touched upon one point which I want to understand. You spoke about good to have, or rather need to have talent.
Yeah.
Right. So that need to have talent would have been hired from external market right now in this lockdown. In such a scenario where you're identifying somebody from outside, how was the entire onboarding process being taken care of?
Sure. So onboarding, we have been predominantly have our processes and systems very much clean and set up in terms of how a team member gets onboarded right from the time the manpower requisition is done, which is purely based on the business requirement. So based on that, the roles and responsibilities are defined very clearly. The onboarding happens usually on a one-to-one basis, but due to this present situation, it was all virtual. So we had virtual team calls rather than the Zoom calls to get the prospective incumbent to get onboarded, get oriented with the organization. And thankfully for us, what had happened was most of our warehouses were functioning. So it was more of a one-to-one onboarding over a period of time. And just that the initial 1 or 2 weeks that we had to do a virtual onboarding because our people were there on board, and people are working in the warehouses. And at this point in time, the basic onboarding was, this is our culture, this is the way we work, this is the way we deliver delight to our customers. Go ahead and showcase your willingness to perform during these challenging times. And we will look at your particular role and responsibility over a period of next 1 or 2 months when things settle down.
Okay. Okay. Very important point. And Bala, so Saurabh, just wanted to understand from you. You guys have pan-India distribution, and as he said, need to have talent, which was important. And you mentioned that there are certain pieces which you would have looked at from a FMCG perspective because the model changed. Some talent which was onboarded, how do you ensure that onboarding was smoothly done, at least at locations which were not directly controlled from the corporate office or the registered offices?
Yeah, right. So in fact, Ranu, not just the FMCG talent that came in, we had a challenge in terms of onboarding close to 100 new joiners in the middle of a pandemic. And I'll explain how. Because given our approach to talent and creating bench strength, on an annual basis we hire a set of sales trainees, and they join us from various campuses, tier 2, 3 campuses across the country, to join us at the entry level of our sales organization. And this entire recruitment had been done, and we had given campus commitments much before the pandemic struck us, as well as an entire batch of management trainees who typically come in from the tier 1B schools and directly join us as assistant managers and so on. This two cadres put together, over 100 aspiring employees, so to say, were already committed. When we looked around, there was a business impact, and the question was, what do we do? Do we defer joining? Do we withdraw our commitments? But I am happy and rather proud to say that the senior management of Berger Paints took the decision that all commitments given on campus will be honored. And that is something we also announced in terms of a press release and so on, so that this entire candidate pool could rest assured and not be in a mode of anxiety as to what happens to them. Now, coming to the onboarding piece. So obviously, since this was all happening in the middle of a pandemic, we had to pivot to a completely virtual mode of onboarding, whether it be through Zoom or Microsoft Teams. Now, you will be surprised, and at least I was surprised to see that we have a lot of misconceptions that can a certain process happen virtually. We have never been doing it, and where's the human touch, etc. But many of our processes have taken to this virtual environment like fish takes to water. So we, with the help of the training team as well as the IT and support systems team, we were able to deliver a fairly seamless onboarding experience virtually for these entire batch of people. And when you go virtual, it gives you the advantage of scale. So where earlier, possibly you could accommodate a batch of 30, 35 people in a room, and people will come and induct them and go away. Here I could do it at one go, and the experience doesn't diminish in any way. So as far as the overall, I would say 80% of the onboarding experience has been very smooth when we moved into the virtual mode. Why I'm saying 80% was smooth, and what is the missing 20%? Yes, onboarding is all about, also about other these newcomers able to build certain networks and acquaintances within the organization, who will help them kind of navigate the new workplace, so to say. And these informal interactions typically happen in a face-to-face mode, or when you are at the coffee machine, or having a lunch discussion. Those things don't happen when people are working from home or are operating virtually. So that 20% piece, which is also very important for newcomers to be able to assimilate into the organization's flow and culture, that piece remains missing. But 80% of it, in terms of content delivery, I would say it has been very smooth.
Perfect. I think something that you mentioned about your coffee machine is also in your article, which I read, right? And you spoke about the engagement inside the companies. Acha, just wanted to understand, very important, because this was related to the coffee machine or the internal engagements. Today, the communication has been flowing continuously and very fast. Bala, my question first goes to you. How are you managing internal inter-vertical collaboration being promoted or managed within the organization? Sometimes it used to happen at coffee machines and sometimes inside the meeting rooms. So how are you managing that, and how has the communication from the first point going to the last point inside the organization? Yeah, Bala.
I think Bala is
Can you
muted.
hear me? Okay. Vicky?
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, you can hear. Yeah, very much.
Okay, so we being a very traditional organization, the personal connect, as Saurav also mentioned, plays a very important role. So it was again an overnight change that we needed to do. So Zoom meeting was the last thing that we would even think of, even during the normal times. We would take a flight and go to Patna or Kolkata and meet our team members, rather than having a virtual meeting. And everything had to just kind of change in 2 days' time. So it took us almost a week's time to come to terms of what we need to do. But then we had to be ready with the alternative action plan. So immediately all the WhatsApp groups got created. Primarily because Zoom was not available for many people. Primarily we had to also transport laptops to our team members across the country. Primarily because since we are also into the service provisioning, we do not have the budgets to give everyone a laptop. So we couldn't afford to give a laptop to everyone in the initial stage. But you need to change based on the situation. The first thing was, everyone was given the laptops. Simultaneously, we did the WhatsApp groups, and every day we would have the WhatsApp calling and the duo calling happening. So I think I would say one of the most people who would have abused Zoom call or a WhatsApp call would have been Parekh, because I think all of us were just on call right from morning 7 to night 11, 12, just to ensure that we are connected to people, because it was something. It was a situation wherein, from the personal front and the professional front, there were a lot of questions, there were a lot of uncertainties, and we being from the management team, not only me as an individual, the entire senior leadership team was on calls every second day, connecting with, we had created teams within teams to ensure that we connect with those subgroups, just touch base from the business perspective and from the personal perspective. So that, we maintain that camaraderie, which is very important, and to ensure that the business keeps running. Because where a warehouse had 10 people, there were only 2 people managing the show, and we were taking the help of a housekeeper or a security to do the picking and packing job. So someone who had never done, like in our head office, we had a security guard who was doing the deliveries with the use of WhatsApp. So he was doing a WhatsApp, identifying a product, sharing it with the operations guy, and then he was packing it and sending it for a dispatch. So these are some things which kind of came out during this pandemic. So coming back to your question, so Zoom calls, weekly calls, I think we have leadership sessions happening, internal, external, cross-functionally. We keep touching base every week. So we have a weekly review now. So the reviews have taken over any personal connect. I mean, that's one thing which has become the flip side of it. So as Saurav mentioned, the coffee gossip has gone off the table. So we can't really gossip over a cup of coffee. It has to be on a WhatsApp. And when you're sitting at home, you can't even do that, because your family members are around you to listen to what you're talking.
Perfect. Saurav, I think I wanted to understand from you specifically on the vertical collaboration that was very important. And I think you launched the product within 15-20 days of seeing the opportunity in the market. how was the intervertical collaboration being managed across the country? And I think you guys are present in certain other countries as well. So
Right,
wanted
right.
to understand your view. Yeah.
So, like I said, we really kind of pivoted overnight into a remote mode of working, which was through Microsoft Teams. And like Bala said, there were certain team members who did not have access to laptops, and we tried and made available these accesses to them, or even if for the time being they can't be allocated their own laptop, can they connect over mobile, etc. So see, this all that I mean, we did everything that is required in terms of IT enablement, and I would say that uh, in terms of collaboration, inter-vertical collaboration, inter-country calls, etc., all of that has been happening. It's been smooth, and research even says that Teams calls when you do, or a Zoom call when you do, the connect between two individuals is possibly of a higher order in terms of interpersonal intimacy, rather than a physical conversation across the table. That's because all of the time you are focused on the individual's face and facial expressions, because that's what the camera throws up. So from a productivity point of view, I think things did not suffer. But I would like to, put a word of caution here, that our experience has also been, and this is what many companies are also sharing in terms of their experience, is that remote working, while it increases, enhances productivity, is also becoming intrusive from a personal life point of view and a work-life balance point of view. So recently, if you see a report which came out from Microsoft, because they use Teams for their own employees as well, and they did an analysis of how much of productivity is happening, how much time people are spending uh, on meetings. They found that the overall time spent in meetings has gone up significantly. Meetings extend into late evenings. I have personally attended a meeting with senior leadership which went on past dinner time, which would never be conceived of as possible when you are working from office, because obviously you would move out of the office now by 7:38. So this kind of intrusion is happening, and like I said, that Microsoft study said that things are, I mean, productivity has increased, number of meetings have increased. Earlier, when in a normal working day, possibly when the travel is involved, commute is involved, maybe you can pack in 2-3 meetings a day. But when you are working from home and using Microsoft Teams, there have been days when I have had some 8-9 meeting requests, possibly of 10-15 minutes duration each. So meetings are becoming more productive. There is less banter, it's more issue driven, and hence you can pack in more in a span of whatever 8-10 hours that you work. But our experience has been that companies who were not used to remote working, which is a company like ours as well, uh, there a lot of sensitization needs to be done in terms of where the boundary between work and life should stop, whether it's at 6:30, 7, 8, whatever. And it really should not intrude to the extent that you lose sight of the entire day, and while you're sitting at home with your family, your kids running around, but from morning 8 till evening 9:30, 10, you are always logged in into the laptop. So that takes a toll on your mental well-being and peace as well. So that is something
I
we
agree.
also need to be mindful of.
I agree. I agree. Bala, I just wanted to understand from a job market perspective, and maybe then we may move on to question and answers. From a job market perspective, and because logistics was in action throughout the lockdown, how do you look at the opportunities from a job seeker's perspective and in the current situation? How can they leverage from the current pandemic?
Sure. I think it just gives me, again, goes back to one saying which says, when one door closes, another one opens up with an opportunity. And when someone has a zeal to succeed in such a challenging situation, it's just that their willingness to go that extra mile, that initiative and passion is what is going to take them to the next level. Similar, just to give a simple example, I think few days back we had a news article going viral about a IT employee who was laid off in Hyderabad selling vegetables, or maybe TV actors who are out of job selling vegetables. So it's not that someone who wants to work cannot work, or someone who wants to be employed cannot be employed, but during these challenging and uncertain times, one needs to be realistic and pragmatic in terms of the availability of the job roles that one would actually like to do, and now one needs to take it up as a survival instinct. That's going to be the key takeaway, or the thought that one needs to get into, especially for the team members at any level, be it at mid-level, junior level, senior level. There are jobs available. Companies are looking to employ and deploy. However, they are being very choosy and picky in terms of the right fitment of the skill set, the right fitment of the attitude into the culture of the organization, and then they are recruiting. For example, during this pandemic, we have had almost new joinees of around 175 across the country, and out of which there are 15 managers who have joined, and there have been new recruits that has happened. So when you have business coming in, you need people to service the business. I mean, you can't have the cliche thing, let me just manage this with a team of 10 when the business needs 15 or 20 people to service. Maybe you can reduce the numbers, but you can't actually do away with the requisite talent that is needed to be deployed to deliver service, because at the end of the day, the customer needs to be satisfied with your service, and he'll be satisfied only when you meet these service levels. If you don't meet these service levels, it's going to be a problem. And that's when organizations like ACE, Acura will come into play a lot more in terms of sourcing the right candidates. I mean, organization like yours or the staffing agencies will need to become more and more picky and choosy in terms of sending candidates for an interview, because only the best would get selected, and the mediocre ones, or some who's getting up to a 60% percentile fitment may not be even considered. Point number two is in terms of not to expect this similar kind of salary package that one would have expected pre-COVID situation. So, someone still asking for a 30% hike or a 20% hike may not be possible in certain positions, but is still possible in a position that is needed to drive the business to the next level.
Perfect. I think so valid point. I would just like to pass on this thing, pass on the floor to Sunil Kabra for various question answers that we've got from our participants. Over to you, Sunil.
Thanks, Ranu. Okay, I think we are getting very good insights from Bala sir and Saurabh. Okay, we have some questions already in the chat box. Okay, I'll just take one by one. One question which has come from Dharav Parikh, which we just got it yesterday. I'll just take that. He is from Team Global Logistics. He is mentioning that due to pandemic, hiring has moved online mostly. Okay, so people are looking and searching for profiles online from a recruitment perspective. How do you assure to hire a right candidate online is what is his question, and what points are to be considered when conducting online interviews? I open these questions to both of you. We can start with Bala sir.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Dharav, that's a good question and a valid one too, because again, it's a new normal for all of us. We were used to conducting one-to-one face-to-face interviews, and when we go into a virtual interview, I mean, there are chances or possibilities that there could be a lag in network connectivity, there could be a lag in terms of understanding the questions, etc. However, just to touch on your question, how do we ensure that we get the right fitment? I mean, I go back to the same old school of thought. If you have the right job description and the right sourcing being done for the candidate, I think whatever questions you throw open, whether it is on a one-to-one interview or on a virtual interview, I think it's up to you and up to the candidate in terms of what skills he exhibits during the interview and whether he fits your requirement. I mean, this is a limited point that I can make. Maybe Saurabh can add.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
See,
sir.
I kind of agree with what Bala is saying, that the mode of interview doesn't really matter. And in fact, when you are doing a virtual interview, like I said, that has been the experience of people who are conducting this, is that the ability to assess the candidate does not go down in any way. It's a more intimate experience. There are fewer distractions. You have better eye contact, so to say. You can assess the body language, the reactions much more in a more incisive manner. So interviewing virtually is not a problem the way I see it. Possibly, if you are looking at assessing some kind of a knowledge where you want to ask him a question and you want to see whether he knows the answer, yes, possibly he can Google it on the side and you wouldn't come to know. But these kind of knowledge-based assessments are best done not through an interview. It's best to be, you can do it over a testing platform which has its own checks and balances. Otherwise, the interview experience does not suffer in any way, provided the bandwidth, connectivity, video feed, all of this is, in line.
Okay. I think very well put through from both of you. I have one question which has come offline from Akash. Okay, it says, how open are the stakeholders from new talent strategies proposed, and what are the challenges normally you face to convince them? Okay, from a new strategy which are coming up from a talent strategy, what are being proposed, and how open are the stakeholders for this new strategies? Saurav, you would like to start first?
Yeah, so I can, we've dwelt on this in terms of how talent strategy is evolving, and like I said, as long as the talent strategy is linked to the business needs, then you will not find much stakeholder resistance. And let me give you a core example of something which is the domain of core HR, say compensation and merit planning. So when eventually all the dust settles down over the layoffs and the furloughs and all of that, you will have to get down to the business of giving people, rewarding people for the effort put in, giving them merit increases and doing appraisals and so on. Now, but budget might be a constraint for you, right? So what do you do? And there is a lot of uncertainty in terms of how the business is looking in terms of panning out in the future. So a typical change in the strategy here, for as far as compensation or rewards professional, would be that you shift from you do a change in the compensation mix. You park more of increases in the performance linked variable side of your compensation rather than on the fixed side. So, and that is something employees will accept. Instead of saying that I won't give you any increase because we've not done well this year, a smarter thing would be to say that yes, I'll give you a 10-15% increase, but a large fraction of that will be linked to performance, and it won't be as much in terms of the fixed pay. And that is, I think, a very sensible strategy which even the business leaders will accept, as well as your employees, given that around them in the world they are seeing so many layoffs happening and people's salaries being reduced. Somebody who gets a hike in any fashion will be happy, and that helps you in terms of managing the cost and the uncertainty piece as well. So to answer the question, that as long as your talent strategy is sensible and linked to the realities of the business, there should not be any difficulty in driving acceptance and adoption.
Sure. I think very well put through in terms of performance, which can be linked in the compensation structure, because that's something which is new, which is coming up. Bala sir, what is your point of view from a stakeholder's perspective? How easy it was for you to take it through from a new talent strategy which you had put forth?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I think what Saurav has touched upon makes, is what I would also vouch for. Number one is, we cannot work in silos. I mean, HR and business have to be interlinked, and more to do with in terms of if the business goal needs to be achieved, the talent goal has to be in sync with that. Obviously, we cannot work in two different directions, but yes, we need to look at it from the realistic point of view. even with respect to compensation increases. So we have had cases when we have done that also during this pandemic. So there is a group of few team members to whom we had to give because they have been performing quite well and they were promised. Again, this comes from the ethos and culture of the organization, which is being very ethical and being fair. So just because a particular situation has happened, and not to take that as an excuse and defer something which is actually something which that employee deserves. However, from the overall perspective, yes, we have deferred the increments for sure, and we don't know when it's going to happen or whether it's not going to happen. No one can comment upon at this point in time. But as an organization and as an HR professional, I think my first prerogative is to ensure that there has to be a marriage of thoughts between the HR concepts and the HR strategy and the business strategy, because we cannot work in two different tracks. So it has to be going well in sync with each other, and take baby steps instead of bigger steps. Take baby steps and take it forward. For example, investment in automation, maybe it needs to be deferred for the next 6 months in certain piece, but for certain piece I need to invest immediately. So that's when we need to pick and choose and take a call accordingly.
Sure. I think that's stakeholders' perspective, and being in sync is coming out from a business perspective is very, very important, because we can't be working in silos. I have one question from Narinder. Maybe you can take that up, Bala sir. What kind of minimum skill sets you are seeing in each function, and strategy to upskill them or have in from a fresh hire perspective? Of course, this could be from a upskill and a reskill dimension perspective. Maybe you want to throw some light on that, sir.
Sure. Okay. So what we are doing currently also is, we are the first point that we are taking care is the attitude and the willingness to adapt to the situation. So someone who's willing and has the right attitude and believes that the company will take care of him or her. Okay, that's point number one. Point number two, what is the ownership and accountability being displayed by the internal resource on whom we are looking to upskill or reskill or take him or her to the next level. I mean, that's going to be what we would be looking at. More importantly, whether the person fits into the next level requirement, what are the gaps in terms of the trainings or the hand-holding that needs to be done, and how quick is the person able to learn. That's also going to be the key. So in the normal time, if I would give him or her 3 months time, during these times, I can give him or her not more than a month, because the person has to be up and running. I mean, someone who would have performed, who would have been sourced from outside, I would expect him to perform at X level. This person, I would maybe expect the person to perform at X minus Y, but needs to happen like yesterday. We can't give a longer time for the person to get used to the situation and take it forward.
So I think that's from a time perspective, that's very critical. Okay. I have one question which has come from Pranali. Saurabh, you can take that. Okay. In this pandemic situation, mostly the recruitment has been frozen or are on hold. Okay. Or there is very limited outsourcing kind of an activity which is happening. Is there any perspective or advice from your side which you see how long this will continue, or when is the back to pre-COVID levels kind of coming out, and you're back in the talent business side?
See, this pandemic, while it has been a shock, it is not here to stay forever, right? And we know for a fact that where it hit worst, like the Western countries, say with the exception of US possibly, largely the European countries are on a recovery path. So, and the pandemic is gradually withdrawing from there. For us, maybe it will take 1 or 2 months when it peaks and things start kind of limbering back to normalcy. But to specifically address the point with respect to hiring and when will that go up, I think that is very industry specific. Like we discussed earlier today, that there are industries which have scaled up hiring even in the middle of pandemic. right? Largely where, people have seen opportunities, whether it's for one good example would be the ed tech space, right? So the entire schooling pedagogy has moved to homeschooling through virtual media. So the ed tech companies are having a field day, they are hiring, whereas possibly more brick and mortar setups have scaled down. So from a job seeker's perspective, I think I would, Bala said, that you need to be flexible, you need to be open to learning new skill sets. If you are in one line of business, which has been impacted, you should look at, where you can develop, where are adjacent skills that you can pick up so that you can find employment somewhere else. Even in HR, talent acquisition professionals have been laid off en masse if you look at the industry as a whole, because TA as a function in terms of volume of activity has gone down. But in the middle of all this, if I am a TA professional who has taken out the time to do a course on, say, compensation or performance management and build certain skill sets there, even within the company or in any other organization, I can find a different kind of a role which is not TA. So it's about your own adaptability, willingness to learn, push from your zone of comfort, and then opportunities will always be there. It's about finding the right opportunity for you.
Okay. That's fine, Saurabh. I have two last questions which are coming through. Okay, so just to from a time perspective, I think we are very good from a time management angle. So the second last question, which is coming from an onboarding experience. Okay, this I think you might have answered it or touched upon some of the points, but what is coming out is when you are welcoming a new employee in the company, in the change scenario, what one can do to delight new joiners onboarding. Okay, ensuring that COVID norms, social distancing, etc., are being maintained, and at the same time, he doesn't that he is being outcast type. Okay, so he is coming new. Okay, and he is joining. So is that I think you have touched upon previously in the webinar some of these points, but is there any key points which you would both of you would like to highlight? Saurabh, we can start with you first.
Yeah, so I can give an example of what we did in our organization in Berger in terms of creating some kind of an excitement around new joining. Typically, and I'm referring to the batch of campus management trainees that joined us in the middle of the pandemic. So these are people who are bursting with energy and a lot of enthusiasm, excitement, and they want to go out there and do something. So and this entire virtual onboarding experience kind of limits their ability to do much, because markets are closed and whatever assignments and projects you are doing have to be from home, and now gradually of course things have opened up. But what we did was in terms of a new joiner engagement activity was we got them to kind of record their experiences and insights that they gained through the onboarding process, and share with us in terms of small snapshots and videos. And then we put those things, those snippets up in our Facebook career page and LinkedIn page. And all of these folks are very well connected in terms of social media. So that gives them a wow moment, that the company is sharing my experience, and I am a nobody. I've just joined 10 days back, and the company is sharing my experience with the larger world, and I'm getting so many hits, likes, and congratulations and stuff like that. So that creates a lot of excitement and initial wow that you are talking about, where in the earlier days we could have sent them gift hampers and done such stuff which are not possible. These are some of the things we've done by leveraging something like a social media, which this kind of a population takes very easily to.
Okay. I think that wow factor is something which is creating some kind of a bonding between the new joining and the company. Okay. Bala sir, would you like to highlight anything on this area?
No, I think whatever I had to speak, I think Saurav has highlighted most of it. So I don't have much
Okay.
to speak about. But only thing I would like to tell is onboarding is an experience, which all of us, including the HR and the business, collaborates and comes together. So it doesn't happen that only one function plans and executes it. It has to be a collaborative effort of all to ensure that the experience is a real wow moment. Because it's like, a newly wedded couple during the initial 1-2 months, things are very hunky-dory. And once you actually get into the reality, things become difficult. So it has to be consistent and sustainable to take it forward.
Very, very, very true. Very true. This question was from Priyanka. I don't know if I mentioned her name previously. Okay. I have next question, which is the last question, which has come from Preeti. And it's talking about future. What are the future obstacles you see in the current talent management exercise, which you may need to overcome soon? And what steps you think are going to mitigate one? What are the steps? Balasa, we can start with you.
Yeah, I think the future is very bright. I would not look at it from the negative perspective. But yes, we have been speaking about self and Saurav and all of us here, is in terms of your skills, how you can sharpen your skills, how you can adapt to the new situation, the new normal, how you can add something before you're market ready or job ready. I think that's going to be the key. As Saurav rightly mentioned, in terms of an HR team member, if someone is a specialist in a particular domain and that particular domain's I would say importance gets diminished, I think the person has to be ready to do something different to be relevant. Otherwise, you are out of the job race any which ways. So the key to every one of us, including all of us sitting on the table as well, is that, we need to keep having that hunger for knowledge and, keep reskilling and upskilling ourselves, because maybe 6 months earlier, as I mentioned earlier, I was not a fan of all these virtual meets because I was finding it very odd to look at your face just with an eye contact and talk. But now that's the reality, and I need to know everything, right from sharing the file to uploading a live video, which I take help of my son to do because I'm still not so very tech geek as such. But I think that's something all of us need to look at. And be it at any level, right from the junior most level to the senior level, adaptability is the key, number one. And willingness to change is the most important thing. That is the punchline of our session has been repurposing. I think that's what we need to do. Whatever happened cannot happen for long. We need to change ourselves.
Sure. I think adaptability is the key point here, and one has to be tuned to the new normal and new strategy and be ready to take it up. Thanks, Bala sir, for your view. Saurabh, would you like to add what are the future obstacles here one would like to mitigate it?
I completely kind of endorse what Bala says, and my only piece of advice to Preeti would be to use a different O word instead of obstacle. I think the entire story of the pandemic should be seen in the light of opportunities that it presents. So if you shift your lens from obstacles to opportunities, then you will see that, there is a lot of hope that you have, both in terms of whether it's about your career, personal, professional life, as an individual, or even if you are an organization or a business leader, there are opportunities that you see in the horizon, and seize them and figure out, how do you excel in those opportunities, because certain strengths that you had today may become slightly less relevant, but certain strengths which you were not leveraging so much in the past, those are some of those strengths, whether those are enterprise strengths or your own personal skills and competencies. Those are some of the things which you need to hone further and invest in, so that you continue to be relevant going forward, regardless of whether it's a pandemic today or an earthquake tomorrow. It doesn't really matter. I mean, if you look at the larger picture, the world has seen much worse than a pandemic. So let's not look at it in terms of obstacles at all. Is my only kind of summarizing comment that I would have.
I think that's a perfect message. It's not obstacle. Be positive. Think positive. Okay, not be positive, but think positive. Okay. That's the right word in this. Okay. I think we have covered almost all the questions. Ranu, over to you. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Sunilji. So rightly said, this is not an obstacle, but an opportunity. And as Bala sir said just now, I think most of the people who've got gray hairs like us are learning from their kids right now in terms of how to use the various digital tools which are available, from Zoom to WhatsApp groups to Telegram, whichever new tools are coming up, right? So I think everybody is doing it. I would thanks once again in terms of summarizing the way you guys said, 1 month, when Saurabh said, 1 man's food is poison for others. The entire product range lined up within a month and across the country. Think of it, the kind of opportunity it throws away to people from what we're doing today. Talent strategy is about aligning to the business strategy, and it has been said multiple times by him. And looking at the productivity from a magnifying glass, very important point if you understand it, because the entire productivity matrix had to be changed and redefined once again. And entire evaluation parameter is happening around it. Changing from good to have talent to a need to have talent. I think Bala, very, very important point, and very important to identifying the kind of talent which is needed now. It's not about the company what needs it. And think of it, 170 hires in the entire lockdown, of which 50 are at a managerial level and above, is a big. I'm sure you guys have identified the requirements with the future requirements. Virtual, what Saurabh said was so right. When virtual gives advantage of the scale and the experience remains constant, I am seriously telling you the way it has been done today. 200 people can be on the conference at the same time instead of having 30 people induction done across the country. I think it makes a lot. It is actually the way that we can talk about. I think Vicky keeps talking about tools. I'm sure Vicky, we've done gray head. And each time when we were talking to Vicky, who runs the ITP, the HRMS platform, used to continuously talk about these tools continuously, and he used to say, "Sir, ye use karke dekhiye, this would help you guys." HR can work in silos, but it is not possible. It has to align with the entire business strategies. I think every function has contributed, have to contribute over a period of time. I would thank Bala and Saurabh for sharing so many insightful points. Right from essential services to the FMCG model, or the industry businesses to FMCG model, talking about your views and sharing idea, the way industry has been shaping up and the kind of opportunity that's throwing up. I would also like to thank Sunil, and I would like to thank Vicky. Ganesh, who's part of our learning and development team, is not here, so he's unwell. And I would like to thank the participants for being so patient and hearing us and looking at it. Keep subscribe to our YouTube channel, Guest Lectures, for more insights, and keep looking at this space continuously from sharing more and more knowledge on the various domains that are coming in. And thanks again to Bala and Saurabh for being a good panelist or the speaker for our session. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ranu, for having us.
Thanks.
Thank you, Bala. Thank you,
Thank
Saurabh.
you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
Thanks.
Bye. Enjoy your weekend.
We can thanks Bala sir and Saurabh once again for the entire flow and the entire presentation. We'll disconnect Vicky and Sunil.
Okay.
Okay, we'll just get into the call maybe later once again. And thanks Bala, thanks Saurabh for sparing your time and giving us the opportunity to get your views and the industry views in the entire topic. Thanks. And Saurabh, keep writing. I think you write quite well. I actually read the article twice in terms of understanding. So keep writing. I'm sure there were very good articles that you had mentioned.
Thanks, Ranu. Thanks. Glad that you read that article.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.